the Impostor Syndrome Files. I am so grateful that you're here, and I really hope that you've been enjoying the conversations that you've been listening to, and hopefully finding some tips, some next steps that you can take if you struggle with similar feelings of self-doubt, which obviously, as you're hearing, are fairly universal. This is something that we all go through from time to time. When I started this podcast, my goal was really to try to normalize the experience, to let everybody know that you are not alone, that there's a name for what you're feeling, and that there are steps that we can be taking to manage it more effectively. What I have found over the course of these conversations has been fascinating. I have had an absolutely powerful and different conversation with every single person who I have interviewed. I worried at one point that there may not be enough to talk about. How much is there to say about imposter syndrome? Are the stories going to start to get repetitive? That has absolutely not been the case. Everyone brings a fascinating new perspective to this conversation. I have learned something from every discussion that we've had. I hope you have too. I want to make a note that many of these recordings are being done during the social distancing that's happening with coronavirus. I am doing my best to protect the sound quality, but we are all in homes that have pets, kids, all kinds of background noise going on. For me, it's much more important to share with you a very natural conversation between two people than it is to share a perfectly polished recording. So I hope that you will bear with us if there are moments where the sound is not perfect. Really, my goal is to share stories, not to provide perfectly scripted, perfectly polished audio. So apologies for any imperfections that may be coming through in the recordings, but I'm hoping that you're getting the essence of the message regardless. So thank you again for being here. I wish you all the best and hope that you will consider sharing your own story one day. Thanks again. Welcome, Brandi. I'm so excited to have you here today. I would love to start by asking you to just briefly introduce yourself to us.
I'm excited to be here. Well, I am a beauty expert, and I also specialize in coaching. So I work with beauty professionals and coaching them in their business. And that's just, a little bit about me. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, but yeah.
And where are you joining us from? Where are you located?
I'm in Michigan.
Oh, okay, great. I spent a number of years in Michigan when I was growing up, so I know it well. So I really appreciate your willingness to come on here today and talk about this concept of imposter syndrome. And what I generally like to start the conversation by asking is, what does imposter syndrome mean to you? How, if at all, has it shown up in your life, in your career?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's definitely been times where I felt like, I wasn't enough, or I wasn't sure if I was qualified for certain things in my life. So definitely.
Yeah. Do you notice any patterns when you think about those moments? Was there anything similar about them?
Well, it's usually like maybe when I'm doing something new, I notice like something that I'm not very familiar with, and it's outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with the comfort zone piece. And that seems to be the key trigger is once we step outside of our comfort zones, that feeling of uncertainty comes with that sense of, I'm not actually qualified to do this, right? Like I don't really belong here. And that sort of triggers the whole experience. When you have found yourself in that situation, how did it show up for you? Were you, anxious? Like what did it look like?
Well, one particular time I really remember was I've been in the beauty industry as a makeup artist for 13 years now. And early in my career, I was asked to speak on, to kind of teach on beauty and makeup at a big, huge conference. And I had never done anything like that before. And I actually accepted it. I was excited to do it. I was preparing for it. But then all of a sudden, right before the conference, I felt very ill. Like, I didn't feel well. I didn't feel like I didn't feel good about speaking at this conference or teaching this workshop. I didn't feel like I could do it. I felt like I wasn't qualified enough to teach a makeup workshop. I felt like I looked at all the people who were going to be involved, and I was like, I just don't belong. These people are, big time. They're doing all these things, and little old me, this little old makeup artist, who am I to just come with all these awesome women and teach makeup? Like, I don't know enough. I haven't been in it enough. And I just really sabotaged that thing.
So what did you do?
I didn't do it. So I actually told the lady I was sick, and I actually did feel physically sick. This was a few days before it. And I think it was just a buildup of fear. So I backed out on the lady. I actually got somebody else who I thought was more qualified, and told her, I had a friend willing to do it. And she told me, I'll just shift the way I do the workshops, because I didn't want your friend to do it. I wanted you to do it. And I told her I was so sorry. I wasn't feeling up to it. And I really backed out of that thing because I was fearful. I didn't think I was qualified. And I allowed that to keep me from doing that speaking engagement.
I think there's something about that feeling of being looked upon as an expert that can really rock us. That sense, like you're saying, of who am I to do this, right? There are all of these other people around, and we question, do I really have the right level of expertise to be having this conversation?
Right. Just even, do I have what it takes? I think I learned a lot from that, and I think I had to go through that experience. I've never done that since. Like, I speak all the time, and I'm always teaching, and I'm known as the expert now. But it's just interesting how my first time, having the opportunity to step out there as the expert, how I sabotaged it because of what I believed about myself and the story I was telling myself, which wasn't true. Like, I wasn't qualified, and I didn't know enough, or I didn't measure up to the people who were on the the speaker, like they had like the speakers panels. And I just felt like these people were levels above me, but that's not true at all, And so what I became mindful of is what I was telling myself. I was telling myself a lot of negative things at that time. And I learned that I have to tell myself who I am and speak life into myself, and not, live there. So I've learned that now. But yeah, that was a experience that I went through at one time, where I allowed imposter syndrome to keep me from, letting my gift shine, keep me from speaking, keep me from teaching.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think that's a really, really powerful story and a great example of what we're talking about. And I'm curious, you talked about recognizing the messaging that you were giving yourself, right? Were there other things that you did to bounce back from that experience? Is there anything that you kind of consciously did, or that in hindsight you see as lessons that you learned from that, or different approaches that you took so that you could be ready the next time? Because you said you've been speaking since then, right? So obviously the next time around, this didn't happen, right? So what changed?
I had to work on myself and work on my mindset. I had a very negative self-image and what I thought about myself. And so I really had to work on that. And so I started doing that just by meditating. I also started journaling, just being grateful and listening to positive audios just to help me to, pour positive things into me, and just changing my circle as well. So those are just some things I had to do. I just really had to work on me.
I love that. I think that we all have an opportunity to do more of that. And we just either are so busy that we think that we don't have time for it, or maybe we're not even self-aware enough to recognize that that would be helpful. How did you work that into your life? I'm sure you're really busy. You've got a lot of things going on. Like, how are you able to prioritize really taking care of yourself and focusing on these positive aspects?
Because I don't know, one day, so this happened, I would say back in like maybe 2010, 2011, when I didn't do the speaking engagement. But the reason why I accepted the speaking engagement, because I knew that I had a call on my life to do so. I had a dream. I had woke up one day and I remember I told my husband, like, I saw myself on stages, like speaking to a lot of people. And I truly believe that I'm supposed to help people and reach people in this way. And, this was nothing I had ever done before. I remember telling him that. And so I knew that. But I realized that it was because of how I saw myself and what I was telling myself that caused me not to deliver on that particular time, the first time I was asked to do it. And so I knew I didn't want to do that again, because I knew that part of my calling was to speak to people, was to teach people and to help people. And the only way I could do that is to work on me. So I saw how important it was to do so. And I just started simply by just, using affirmations, just simple things. It wasn't nothing major, like just posting up, I am enough, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, just different things like that, just being careful. And I started there with just posting sticky notes. And before I would go to work in the morning, I would say these things and I would post them on my mirror and post them in my office at home. And I just started there. So just starting on small stuff and listening to encouraging audios, maybe on the way to work or on the way to, maybe picking my daughter up or whatever runs I had to make. And so things like that, I was able to fit into my schedule, because we're always running, doing different things, driving here, driving there, doing this, doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And those can be times where you can work on yourself. So those were the times when I worked on myself. When I got up in the morning, when I looked in the mirror, I worked on how I talked to myself, and, and when I was driving.
I love that. I think we have more time than we realize. It's great to see how you were able to not have to take huge chunks of time, but just fit it in very natural ways.
Definitely. Because we're always, I know me as a mom, I'm always on the go, always on the go, always doing something, going to this practice, going to that practice, going to work. So during those times where you're just driving, doing nothing, I would listen to music a lot of times, but I stopped listening to music as much because I wanted to feed myself, positive things. And so I started using my music time to take in, audio books and different audios that would help, me with my mindset.
I'm curious about something that you said too. Speaking of mindset, when we were first talking about that speaking opportunity, you were talking about it through the lens more of being, at least this is my interpretation, right, of being more of an expert and who are you to talk to all of these people. And I think sometimes when we frame in our minds that the role that we're playing is that of expert, that of, this sort of all-knowing figure who's supposed to be knowing all the answers, having everything all figured out, right? That's a really intimidating position to hold. Whereas later you said you were talking to your husband about your calling being to teach and help people, right? And I think that when you reframe it less as I'm this all-knowing expert and more so as I'm a teacher, I'm here to help, I want to be supportive, that it feels more natural and it is more motivating. I'm curious if you made that connection.
I didn't necessarily make the connection, but now that you've said it, I could see, well, maybe that's what it took for me to continue to do it. Because I think a lot of times we do look at experts or people who are in the spotlight and we put them on this pedestal like they're perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe I felt like I had to be perfect. And because I wasn't perfect, I wasn't good enough, and I think a lot of people will do that. And once I realized it was something that I was gifted to do, that I needed to do to help people, and I just looked at it as I help people rather than being this expert, then it may have helped me shift and continue to do what I do today. But yeah, that's great insight. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I can see how that could play a role in it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely helped me too, because I think many of us as women and even men struggle with this, but particularly if we are entrepreneurial or we're taking that kind of expert role, like you're talking about, right? Being put on a pedestal. If you're speaking, there's that intimidation factor, but reframing it to be more in a role of service where I'm not here to have everything figured out. I'm just here to help, I think goes a long way. And I've certainly found for me in managing my own anxiety and confidence issues that feeling helpful makes me personally feel more confident.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So you've obviously come a long way since that experience. Does this continue to show up for you? And if it does, do you have little tweaks or things that you do to get back on track, or how do you manage it now after getting through that big episode that we talked about earlier?
Yeah, it still pops up here and there, not as major, but like anytime I'm getting ready, like I speak often on a local news station here where I live, and they call me in, to talk about different beauty topics, and I also teach different workshops and things of that nature. And anytime I'm getting ready to speak, or anytime I'm getting ready to go on TV or anything like that, sometimes I feel like a little bit nervous, and sometimes I feel like, I hope I get this right, but I just have to remind myself who I am.
Mm.
So I just remind myself, that, I have a purpose and a calling, and I can do this. I'm enough, and what I bring to the table, clearly they want to know it because they have me here at the table. So there's room for me at this table. I'm supposed to be at this table, and I just have to check myself. Sometimes, like when I get a little too nervous, a little too fearful, and I'm feeling like, inadequate, I'll definitely start to speak my affirmations and, pump myself up. And I have to do that every time before I get on stage or before I go on TV, just do those things to really get myself pumped so that I'm confident and able to deliver.
I love that you have those in your back pocket ready to go. I think that's a really good strategy for those of us who have bouts of imposter syndrome from time to time, right? When you have things that work for you available to you so that the next time it happens, you don't have to try to figure out a new strategy and just go back to what's already worked, and it's right there ready for you to take advantage of.
Exactly. Yeah, I just have to remind myself who I am, and, remind myself that I'm enough, and what I bring to the table is valuable, and I got this. And I have to tell myself, you got this, And once I started to speak it, I started to, believe it. I usually will get in the mirror when I'm getting ready. And, my mom, she passed a few years ago, and she was always very bold and confident. And, sometimes I would just say her name and say, I'm her daughter, I'm walking in her footsteps and she's with me. And that would just encourage me when I would think about her in that way. And so though things like that help me. I just have to remind myself who I am.
I love that. And I love what you said about there's room for me at this table. I think that's such a powerful statement. And I think it's something that so many of us forget when we find ourselves in these intimidating moments. And, even for people in an everyday office environment who come into meetings and question whether they have value to offer, worry that they don't belong, right? We're not just talking about being on stage, we're talking about everyday interactions. And to be able to consistently remind yourself, I belong in this room, right? There's room for me at this table is such a powerful affirmation.
Yes, I would agree. Definitely. I think anybody, no matter, what position you're in, can definitely feel like an imposter. I think, I feel we all go through it at one point or another in our life. Even people who you see who are very successful, I'm sure they felt it at one point, or maybe still continue to feel it, but they push through it some type of way. So I think this is something that we all go through, no matter what we're doing in our life. There'll be times where we feel like that, and we have to remind ourselves, we have to speak to ourselves, because you believe the story that you tell yourself. So because what you hear between your two ears, you're going to believe that the most, because that's what is in between your two ears. So what you speak out of your mouth is what you're going to believe. And so you got to make sure you're telling yourself the right things about yourself.
You're so right. I mean, and I've heard this before too. I don't know a lot about neuroscience, but I've heard that your brain can't distinguish between fact and fiction. It just believes what you tell it, right? So I love when you're talking about affirmations and the way that you're talking to yourself, your brain's going to believe that.
Absolutely. It's absolutely true. Because if you think about it, if you're constantly speaking negative things or fear or whatever, that's what you're going to attract, what you're going to bring to yourself. I remember, like, a lot of times I've had like just false fear about different situations. And because I just really meditated on fearful thoughts, something kind of bad happened. And I was like, see, I knew something bad was going to happen. Well, I kind of like, just talked about it so much, meditated on it so much, I mean, that's what I brought on to myself. But I noticed when I began to speak life and I began to tell myself who I am and who, and remind myself that I'm able and capable to do anything that's put in front of me, that it makes me feel strong. It makes me feel like I can do it and not so much fearful. And it allows me to, do the things that I need to do and accomplish.
I love the story. What you're talking about, I think, is really powerful, because what you're describing is having been on this journey, essentially, of self-care, self-discovery, a self-affirmation, right? Where you have learned to respect and appreciate yourself and set higher expectations on yourself, is how I'm interpreting this, right? And so it sounds like that has been really helpful to you as you've navigated future challenges and opportunities that have come before you. But what you're saying, which I think is really honest and really important for other people to hear, is that it still comes up for you, right? You haven't completely gotten rid of the nerves, that sense of, what if this time is different, right? But you found tools that help you, and you know how and when to access them.
Yes, because we need to work on ourselves continually. Like, we always need to work on ourselves. And you're not going to always feel confident all the time. You're not going to always feel capable to do different things in life all the time. And so it's just a continuous thing that I find that I have to do. Though now I would say, I am a little bit more confident. Like, I'm not as fearful to step out, and I'm going to step out in different ways. But sometimes right before, you get that little tight feeling in your stomach, or you kind of feel like, oh, I hope I do this right, And then when I feel those feelings, I have to check them, and I have to, remind myself of my affirmations and tell myself who I am. And that gets me back on track and allows me to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I also once heard that the physiological experience of anxiety is exactly the same as excitement. So that same rush of your heart rate is racing and you get that nervous feeling in your stomach. And the only difference between the two is the story we tell ourselves, right? So if we interpret that physiological sensation as dread or fear or anxiety, we're going to respond very differently than if we say, actually, this is something I'm really excited about. The reason I feel this way is because I'm looking forward to it. And in the same way that you would feel on a roller coaster or before a first date, right? So I think that it's often, as we've been talking about, just how you frame it in your mind.
It definitely is. A lot of times, I've heard people say that you feel nervous because you want to do a great job. And a lot of times that's what it is too. Like I want to do my best. And so I know that if I don't feel nervous, maybe I should be worried. So I just know I want to do my best. And usually once I just step out and start doing it, then I'm in my zone and I can get the job done, whatever it may be. So I just, look at it as I want to do my best. I want to be my best. And so I just have to remind myself that I'm capable of being my best and I have something great to offer and I'm here to help and I'm here for a reason and I'm enough, and just remind myself of those things. And then it gets me right back on track and allows me to just, walk into whatever situation I need to walk into and do the job that I need to do on that particular day.
I love it. Thank you again. This has been such a great conversation. I'd love to, in closing, ask you a couple questions. What motivated you to want to tell your story today? And what are you hoping that people will take away from it?
Well, I think that it's more common than we think. I think we look at other people and we think they have it all together, right? And we think she's little Miss Perfect. She has the perfect this, the perfect that. And, and so a lot of times we'll do that and we feel like, and so because I think she's so perfect, that means that makes me less than. And I understand that that's, not good for any of us to feel that way. So one of my goals is to help people to understand that you are enough and that whatever you were called here to do, whatever purpose you have, you can do it. And you need to stop looking at other people. No one's perfect. We all have imperfections. And we're able, if we allow ourselves and be careful what we're telling ourselves, we're able to achieve anything that we're here to do. And so I really want to encourage other women and other people of that, and to let people know that they're not alone in feeling those feelings. But sometimes we have to feel the feelings and then still push through and do it anyway, whatever it is that we're trying to do that we feel like we're not adequate enough to do.
Thank you so much for that inspirational message and for sharing your story with us today. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I'm sure others are really going to enjoy listening.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with other women who can benefit from this conversation. Before we go, I want to share some additional resources with you. If you struggle with imposter syndrome and you want to manage it more effectively, I invite you to join my free Impostor Syndrome online challenge. Every day for 7 days, you'll get an email with self-reflection questions and exercises to help you better understand your own experience with imposter syndrome and how to navigate it more effectively. To join the free challenge, visit executivecareersuccess.com/imposter-syndrome-challenge. When you sign up, you'll immediately receive your first message. Also, if you're interested in joining a community of women who engage in candid conversations that generally aren't happening elsewhere, I invite you to join my Leading Women discussion group. On the first and third Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern, we meet virtually over Zoom to talk about questions or challenges related to career management, leadership development, and any other relevant topics such as imposter syndrome and confidence. It's always a great discussion with a great group of women. If you want to check it out, you're welcome to be my guest on a future call. Just reach out to me at kim@executivecareersuccess.com and I will share the call details with you. And if you want to join my newsletter to receive tips, insights, and updates, text Leading Women, all one word, to 66866. Finally, consider telling us your story. Contact me to learn more about how you can be a guest on the Impostor Syndrome Files. Thanks again and have a wonderful day.